Okay, it's recording. All right. Break a leg, y'all.
There you go.
Thanks.
All right.
So, if we got 4 minutes after I finish this little song and little story and song, I'm gonna one of y'all is going to have to take it while I sit down because I'm
Yeah.
standing up for this, and then
I figure after you do a story and song, Dan will have a brief reaction and then probably ask me to say something about the role of storytelling in organizing, whatever else he wants me to talk about.
and I plan on doing it within time. I plan on doing at least one, two, three more songs. At least three more songs.
Love it.
Uh,
Love it.
and probably one more story song because I'm big on I like story songs.
Sounds great.
Okay.
And Ben, all right, you know how to spotlight?
I do.
Okay, I'm going to leave that to you because I have learned it, but I'm trying to remember now and can't.
Yep.
So I'm going to leave it.
You want me to tell you or you want me to just do it?
I want you to do it.
Okay. I don't mind.
You're, we don't have to do that though till we get people in.
Yeah, I got you.
It will, I'm gonna in about 2 minutes. I'm gonna stand up, so somebody's gonna need to nod to me when to start at least, because
Right.
I don't have a clock in front of me and I don't know what time.
Okay, no worries. I'll make it clear.
Do we have people online? Can you tell it how many
We
people?
have two
online?
in the waiting room right now.
Two?
Two.
Well, I might do a short story then.
That's right.
Well, no, if you look on the bottom, Ben, it says 6 participants. Oh, right. but
Well, no, it's 4 of us plus 2 in the waiting room.
Well, okay.
So we'll give them a little bit of time to accumulate.
Yeah, right. And it's we got Linda, which is a gift, so we're gonna just use that,
Yeah. Yep.
And we just lost one.
I'm not going to entertain you you can just.
No, it's only us 4. We'll thank everybody and try another time. I'm sure we'll get more. People tend to come late.
Yep. All right. It is now 7 on the dot. You want me to let this 1 or 2 people in, or you want to wait a couple minutes?
Let's wait a few minutes.
Okay.
Write a little thing and I'll write something in the chat. We'll be starting in a few minutes.
Sounds good. All right.
Oh, this is rolling in now.
Okay, we got 4 in the waiting room now. It's only 1 minute after, so we'll
All right.
wait another 2 or 3 minutes. So Ron, are you at home now?
No, I'm actually up at Donna's house because I got in my mind that Ben was going to be here today because he kept saying he was going to back me up. And I'll tell you right now, the distance between Philadelphia and here don't feel like backup. It feels.
Well, he's got control of the tech, and
Well, then
and so
well, see that's yeah. Oh, okay, that's the new world
got-
I live in.
I know we got to get used to this virtual world.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
he's,
no. if I ever get used to that, I want you all to, we'll sign a pact here before we leave tonight that you'll come and take Ron away. Or
All right, we got 5 in the
Yeah, let's let him in and I'll do the intro for a few minutes and it should keep growing.
yeah,
Sounds good. Sounds good. And you should know we might talk about this later, but I will be seeing Ron on Thursday because we're heading down there
In person.
in person. Got a big
Yeah.
event this weekend. Got a big book event this weekend.
Oh, good.
All right, here we go.
hey,
Oh,
hey,
well, welcome, Karan.
hey,
Karan is the president of the International Storytelling Association. We're very glad to have you here with us today.
Good morning.
Thank you,
Actually,
Nan.
I'm the vice president of the Australian Storytellers Guild, and
Oh,
we
you
are
are?
having an international conference. I'm the co-convener this June.
Oh, okay, great. And then we have 2 folks with similar names.
Yeah. Hi, Kieran. Good to see you.
Karen.
Hey.
Yeah, it's a unisex name.
Yeah. I see.
It's good to be here. Thank you, Dan. As I said, I'm not sure if I can stay. I'm
For
still.
the whole thing. Yeah, I
but
understand.
It's good to be here.
But it's great to have you. We really appreciate it. So I'm gonna, Lou and Marilaya and Jacob, if you come put your video on, that would be great. We'd love to see you in person, so to speak. Maybe we just say, I'm Dan Friedman, by the way. I'm the program manager of Let's Learn, and Let's Learn is where you're at. We're a free online school. It's a joint project of the Eastside Institute, where I am on the faculty, which is an international research and teaching center it focuses on innovative approaches to social change and development. And we're partnered with the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, their international honors, Lloyd Honors College. So, and we, all of our teachers are volunteers, which is why we can make all of our workshops and classes free. And we're very excited tonight because we have a very special guest, a teacher, facilitator.
One very special guest, one pain in the ass.
Yeah. Well, Ron
Interpret as you
Short,
will.
the man standing there with the banjo, is our storyteller, and he's been a member of the Roadside Theater in Eastern Kentucky since the late 70s. He knows a huge amount of traditional tales from his native Appalachian area, and a lot of his stories have been the basis of plays that have been created by Roadside Theater. And he's joined by Ben Fink, who is an ensemble member of Roadside Theater and also a grassroots organizer who travels a lot and has built tremendous stuff, including the launching of Performing Our Future, which is a coalition of grassroots groups who are, Ben, take a second and tell them what Performing Our Futures are while we got a moment.
Sure. First, just quick to clarify that Ron and I are both former ensemble members of Roadside Theater. So Ron is in retirement and I'm in whatever stage of my life I'm in, but we were both there for a while, Ron longer than I. And one of the projects that I was working on at Roadside during my 5 years there was an extension of work that Roadside has done for a long time, which is building long-term grassroots to grassroots collaboration and ultimately coalition between organizations of buy-in for working class, middle class communities across the country, across racial lines, across political lines, across rural urban lines, across regional lines. And so here's the website. And I don't know if Tiffany's going to be able to join us tonight, who's the current lead organizer of Performing Our Future, but Dan has met her in previous work and think she may be somewhere in Europe right now, so that may explain why she is not here. But that's us, and I will say right off the bat, because we are doing this as volunteers, as Dan said, but not entirely devoid of self-interest. Ron and I are two editors of a new book series that just came out next week, and I'm going to put the link to that in the chat as well. And we'll be talking about that at various points through the evening. Art in a Democracy, Selected Plays of Roadside Theater, 2 volumes of plays, essays, stories, reflections from almost 50 years of Appalachian and intercultural storytelling, playmaking, organizing in all parts of the country, in all manner of situations, and the lessons that we can learn from that today.
Okay, great. Welcome, Raquel from California. Without further ado, I want to turn things over to Ron to get the workshop going. So if Ben, if you could put the spotlight on him. Ron, you're on.
Ladies and gentlemen, you all know me here for some time. I am Jim Wolf from the Saltworks, liable and capable of whooping anything from an engine down to a rattlesnake. Why, sirs, I can whoop the toenails off in a grizzly bar. Never was whooped but once. Fixing to tell you about that. I went over to Deacon Smith's for a meeting. When I got there, oh Lord, I was hot enough to melt pure oil, and I thought of a pond in Deacon's Miller, so I went west bend in a southerly direction until I got there. I was in the pond of bacon, pulled off this old red flannel hunt shirt of mine, laid on the bank. I looked out on the bank, I see the devil standing there. The pure tea devil. Well, he swore he was the best man that ever stood there. I give him the lie, sir. He made a dive at me. I stepped back and I said, hey, I ain't no man for standing in another man's way. Well, he made another dive at me. I grabbed him by the seat of the pants, give him 6 or a half dozen circles around that large mirror, come to a big old white oak stump, wrapped his tail around that stump, and I said, now you stand there, or you pull that stump out by the roots, or your tail one to the... I could soon see by the cut of his eye, he gonna stand. And then I looked, and I see 6 or a half a dozen of them old brindled hounds from hell coming across that large mirror, and I know they's gonna all pile in on me and kill me, or devilish now I do it. So I says, hey devil, I'm gonna take this to pass my back into yours, and I did unloosen him. He grabbed me by the seat of the pants, coat collar, pitched me over to the north side of the south of the mountain into a beech, white oak, sugar maple, linwood tree. Guess what was there when I got there? Hornet's nest. Yep, some of them stung me, some of them stung Brenda, some of them stung them old hounds. Went on down the road, met that pretty little red dress gal of mine. Woo, doggy, don't you reckon I was an awful looking sight? My mammy was a she-wolf, my daddy was a bar. I'm 200 pounds, tooth and claw, covered over with heart. Half fire and a half smoke, and the other half is thunder. I am what you might call the eighth wonder. Hey, look out boys, get out my way, you ladies get in line. I ain't perfect, but I'm close, so I'd die if I'm lying. I could whoop my weight in wildcats, and I could eat me a ton of taters. Pour the flicker in my mouth, float me an alligator. Hey, look out, boys, get out my way, you ladies, get in line. I ain't perfect, but I'm close to dying if I'm lying. You know, I can sit up on a hornet's nest, I can dance on my head, tie me a rattlesnake around my neck. Then I go to bed. Hey, that boy, get out of my way, you ladies, get in line. I ain't perfect, but I'm close on dying if I'm lying. Hey, look out, boys, get out of my way, you ladies, get in line. Starts at the rear. I ain't perfect, but I'm close, I'm dying if I'm lying. Dying if I'm Thank you muchly.
Where's that story and song come from?
Well, that was one of the first. My grandpa told that to my daddy, and that was one of the first things I learned from my daddy. He taught me that when I was a little boy. So they would call it doing recitations and stuff. But it's actually much more involved than that. It comes from a part of culture that not many people realize or know about. The American culture didn't start to get formed until there became people like this person who, for the first time, were having to take care of themselves, to make a place for themselves in the world. And what happened was, as will happen with young men of strength and no character or whatever you want, they like to brag about stuff. You know, they like to tell each other just how strong and how bad they are. It's just the thing that happens. And interestingly enough, now this is one of the interesting parts about it. That particular kind of bragging is there are many, many cultures throughout the world that have that. Africa, particularly, and still in the African tradition, it was on the streets of the Bronx and just about every urban situation in the world, wherever young black men would gather up, they start in on each other about yo mama, and then the next thing you know, they would just swap and it was called cutting. That was one thing they called it. Was called cutting. And it was like who could say the worst possible thing about whoever and get away with it. And you had to show enough character not to get mad. You had to hold back and pretend and then use your wits and your own intelligence to create something more. It went from that kind of thing in the urban situation to rap. It went, that's the thread. That's the thread it followed. We just came back from the Bronx, and our friends from Pregonistas are going to come down here. And a few blocks away from where we were performing, there's a little bronze plaque on a brick wall that says, "On this spot, hip hop was born." And they use the same kind of characteristics of these songs and these stories. Like in our storytelling, they would what they call doubling. When you get to the end of a sentence, another voice would come in and double with you, so it would the impact would double. We use that. We didn't know that they had used that. We also use this other thing of saying dual lines together. Say the line all the way together. So it had another way of having an impact on it. And you find this in very early hip hop. And curiously enough, almost in the same years, exactly the same years that Roadside Theater was born, were the years when hip hop was born, for the very same reasons. You had a displaced communities, members, young men without jobs, who felt pretty out of place. It felt like they didn't belong and nobody cared what was happening to them. And so they began to create for themselves this image, this continued to be, this macho kind of, well, some people would call it macho, but it was a way of feeling strong, feeling proud about yourself. And that's when we started telling stories, and they started using the dozens, or as they called it, the cutting that came from Africa in the Bronx. The same thing was happening in terms of economy and all sorts of things, issues of health and education. And so what Roadside started to do was to go to our ancestors. In the same way we're talking about these young black men going to their ancestors, looking for the roots of culture and history. And we started I started going talking to my family. I started talking to my dad and my grandmas and stuff, and all these stories that were a part of our old culture that had brought the language that they used, or in the language that we use, is still the language that we use. Not as much as we used to, but there was a time when my daddy, if you'd had a conversation with him, you might not have been able to understand fully everything that he was saying because he was using a lot of times the old language that came from Ireland. We were Scots Irish. My family was Scots Irish, and then DNA came along and proved, of course. Uh, um, well, you are too. We're African too.
We're
We're
all
all
mixed up.
we're all the
I re-
same thing. And these stories will help you see that clearer than anything. You'll see these threads running through all these different cultures, and ending up in the same place. And most of the times for the very same reasons, because people need an identity to survive in this world. They need to have a sense of who am I. I mean, it's not. I'm not being philosophical here, but who am I, and what? How do I belong? Where do I? And I think our culture, our history, and our music uh, explain that sometimes better than anything that we.
Ron, could you give us a sample of the old language, like what your father would have, how he would have talked?
Um, well, he was one of them. I'm a fixing to go up yonder in the left field and pick me a mess of beans. You know, I'm a fixing to go was a really common thing. I'm a fixing to go up yonder and pick me a mess of beans. Now you could get a mess of beans, which is a really good thing, or you could be in a mess, which was not a really good thing. But the mess of beans and the mess is two different things. My daddy used to say, "Lord, have mercy, that feller ain't worth carrying." I'm telling you, he ain't worth carrying. Now, when he said that, oh, buddy, that was not a good thing at all. Uh, that I mean, and it was the use of those um, um, the different tenses to reflect uh, the present and the past. Fixing, I'm a fixing.
Yeah.
Uh, I could be a
Ron,
fixing to go meeting. I could be a fixing to go fishing. I could be a fixing to go, I could be a fixing dinner. I could be all of those, but you got to know where it fits and how it fits.
mhm. Could you move your screen down a little bit? We're missing the bottom of your face.
Bottom of my face.
Yeah,
How's that?
that's much better. Yeah,
Okay,
much
thank
When
you.
you stand up, Ron, you'll need to put it back up
I'll
again.
move
That's
back.
why.
I'll move back further or whatever.
Yeah,
Uh,
all good.
for the next ones that it's uh, I'm, when I have stories like that, I find it really, really hard to sit down and do it. It's got to be get it in my body, or I just can't. I mean, it's like I'd feel like I was reading a book, or rather, And that's I mean, I ain't got nothing against reading books. Don't be a you know. In fact, I loved books, but I especially love books when it's language of story. I mean, when it's you get the sense that you know that person and the way what they're going to say and what they're going to do because of the language that they use. Um, but there is a heap of difference between um, reading and storytelling.
Oh yeah,
And there
and
is a heap of difference between uh, writing and storytelling. Now, I've done both, and I tried to learn how to write, and I think I did learn how to write as a storyteller, because when I write, I speak every word that I write. And
mhm.
I've written a dozen plays, and I speak every bit of language that I write down before I write it down. So does it sound right? Does it flow? Does it sound natural? Does it sound dumb? Does it sound, all those kind of things, because I am listening for sound. Because if you are reading a really good narrative, you will hear the sound of that voice. You know, you can't read Huck Finn and not hear his voice.
Mhm.
You know, you can't read Steinbeck and not hear the, you can't hear Tom Joad
Yeah.
and not hear that voice. So for me, storytelling is still central to writing. And
Mhm. But can we go back for a minute to the late 70s? You were saying that in your community there were a lot of young men without jobs, and what moved you to start a theater?
it, well, it was
How did that happen?
a lot of us. A lot of us were coming back from Vietnam,
Mhm.
and it was inevitable. I'll tell you this for a fact, and if you go anywhere in the world today, you'll find exactly the same thing. When I ended up in Southeast Asia, what I found that was standing beside me when the time come to go out there was Puerto Rican guys and black guys from the Bronx, Southern boys from Alabama and down south. In fact, Southwest Virginia, where I live, in East Tennessee, had the highest rate of volunteerism of any place in America during that war. The first person killed in Vietnam was from Southwest Virginia, where I'm at Wise County right now. So we came back politicized in a way that we had never been before. We saw that this wasn't our war, and this thing was being fought for who, and you come back and you found out that while you was away, not these people was making money. And so we got a little bit politicized, to the point that we started saying, listen, you can call it democracy if you want to, but you can buy that shit if you got enough money. And if you don't have a public voice, if you don't have a voice of your own, and it's public voice, then you ain't going to be able to do nothing. You ain't going to be able to change nothing. How do you have a public voice when you don't have no money and you're kind of low on education? At that point in time, I had a high school education with 1 year of college, and my number come up and bing, I'm gone. But when I came back, what can you do to have a public voice? You can't buy no radio station. You can't own no TV station. You can't run for political office. What are you going to go? You say, okay, you can teach. Oh, hell, that ain't a public voice. That belongs to them people. No, that. So we looked and we said, well, you know what? We'll just start. We'll just start as a theater company. They're like, well, you don't have no costumes and you don't have no. We don't need no stuff. That's where the name Roadside Theater came from. What roadside theater means is we pull up the side of the road and by God, we can do a show. Because we don't need no costumes. We need our bodies and our voices, and we learn to double those lines, and we learn to do choruses, and we learn to swap language so fast you couldn't tell who was talking. And the language was alive. It just moved and popped from one voice to the other, And then what happened was the audience would get so excited by this because they were hearing stories that they knew were true. They started talking back to us. No, that didn't happen that way. Now let me tell you how it happened. Well, go ahead and tell us. It don't matter. We didn't have no fourth wall. We didn't have no curtain. So it's pretty hard to have them, And so there we were, roadside theater. We were willing, we could stop beside the road and do a show. We started saying to the schools, we'll come to your school and we'll do a show, music and tales mostly, and for your young'uns, and they would pay us $50 or feed us lunch.
Mhm.
And then we got some money together and we got us a tent, a revival tent, not a circus tent. It wasn't big enough for a circus tent. Wouldn't hold no elephant. Might have if that's the only thing that's in it. But anyhow, we got us a tent, a revival tent, and we started going around to places, and we'd say to people, can we hook up the electricity here for tonight? And we're going to do a show and you can come for free. And in the afternoon, it's a show for the youngins, and they can come for free. And so we started building an audience, and we started getting people coming to us. And then when we got the theater at Apple Shop, they started coming to us. And lo and behold, come one day, God, they had to make reservations to see Roadside Theater. Now, some of them was not happy about it. What you mean I gotta make a reservation? I've been looking at them for the last, well, and I'm not saying it's easy. I mean, we started out, but what we did, me and Dudley Cox was the other guy who was putting together the Art and Democracy books. When we got together, me and Dudley made a pact that we would never go without a payday, that we would always get paid for our work, and we would all agree on how much we were going to make, and nobody was going to make no more than anybody else. But that we believed the quickest way to stop the work that we were doing is to devalue that work and to say, you're not even worth $10 that we're paying you. What we made more than that, but it wasn't much. You're not even worth that. That will, even if you you have to believe that you have value. You have to believe that what you are doing is valuable. And I'm not saying the money was what gave it the value. It was the idea of that we ourselves would apply value to it. They won't pay us. NEA won't give us no money. So we will value ourselves. Okay, if we're on the stock market, we'll determine what the stock prices is, not you all.
Right. Could you possibly tell us one of the stories that led to one of your first plays? I mean, maybe it's too long, but if you could give us a sample.
I can do a little. I can do a little excerpt, if you will. One of the best things that ever happened to me during this process was that I got to go spend a lot of time with my dad and sit down with him and just talk. We'd never had time to do that before. We was always busy with something, and he had reached the age and I had reached the place where, okay, this is what I'm going to be a writer. I when I was went back to college, and I did go back to college after I got out of Vietnam. I was in a one person. I had a professor who got the University of Virginia at Wise to agree to allow me to be a one-person class. And I just wrote the whole year. I wrote because I was already writing. So when I went to see my dad, I didn't feel like I was being lazy or not doing a job. I come from old regular Baptists. Yeah, I don't know if you know nothing about the old regular Baptists, but buddy, they believe you only is worth as much as you're willing to work. And if you ain't willing to work, you ain't worth carn. And so I went to see my daddy, and I sat down with him, and I talked with him, and I learned so much from him. Oh my, I learned so much from him, and I'm so thankful for that. And he says, yeah, I have seen a rock fall in the mines. I've been right where it fell. I was loading one day. Roof was just about 36 inches high, and I had to get down on my knees to load the coal car. Now they don't pay you by the hour; they paid you by the car, depending on how many carloads you could load that day. That's how you got paid. And you better not put no rock in there or a slate. Well, they'll take that out of your pay. So I was down on my knees a shoveling, and I don't know. I just felt something. It was like my chest got tight, like a band or something. I thought, oh boy, what did I eat for breakfast? I better watch that sausage. And I raised up, and when I raised up, I looked down the rails, right down the shaft, and I saw it, the roof. It looks like a wave. That's what it looks like. Only it's a wave in the rock, not the water. You can see it coming at you. The whole top of the shaft was just like this, just wave coming at me, and I know what is going to happen. If that daggone thing got to where I was, man, she's coming down. And I didn't have no time to run. I didn't have no time to do nothing. I didn't have no time to pray. I tell you that, son. I lit down on my face in the mud beside that coal car. And down I went, and I spread myself out just as thin as I could. And down that rock come. Whoa. Landed right on top of that car that I had been loading. That car, that goddamn coal car that I had cussed every day of my life. Now the Lord will show you a way. That coal car caught that rock, and there I laid, looking up at it. That's the only thing that kept it from getting me that day.
Wow, thank you.
Ron, I want to mention something. You may have something more to say about it because, I worked at Roadside for many years, and unlike Ron, it will shock you to know, given the way my voice sounds, that I did not grow up in the coal fields. When I came to live in the coal fields, I started describing myself to people I met as a communist Jew from the Northeast. And they responded just the way Ron's doing right now. And I told him it's not really technically true, because where's there a communist party worth joining these days? But you get the idea. Point being, I'm a weirdo there in a whole bunch of ways. And in the years before I went there, I had trouble imagining that there would be people in a place like that that would want to take me in, right? And I think a lot of people listen to, the story like that. It's like, oh, that's so specific to coal country. And this is such a, it's a very, what academics would call a culturally specific story. And, Ron, I'd love to hear a little bit of, somebody from a place far away from the coal fields, somebody from the Black Belt of Alabama, somebody from San Francisco, somebody from, all the places y'all toured. How did they respond and resonate to a story like that? How does it help communicate?
I mean, I understand what you're saying when you say that it's culturally specific.
Mm-hmm.
I do understand, and I think that often the mistake people make when they start trying to write is they start trying to write things they don't know about. They have a story they want to tell, but they don't have the muscle and the skeleton and the sinew of that really comes from knowing, and so it is in that it is about the minds. Of course, in Wales, we didn't have no trouble at all with them understanding it. In Poland, we didn't have no trouble at all with them understand. In Czech Republic, in any place they were mining coal. I'll tell you the truth. You go to any place in the world they're mining coal, you will find the same damn conditions. Poor health, bad pay. I mean, trying to kill the unions everywhere. I mean, you will find exactly the same conditions. But there's another thing. People who work for a living recognize other people who work for a living. You can't fake it with people who have that knowledge. They, you know, as our friend John O'Neill said, "Ever shut eye ain't asleep." You know, we people know the truth when they hear it. Now, I have a hard time these days in believing in democracy until I hear somebody who says, people who know the truth, people do know the truth when they hear it. And so when we tell those stories, when we told those stories, we recognize that if the people at home accepted those stories, if the people at home gave us their 5-star reviews, in a sense, we knew we could go anywhere. We knew if we could go to the Zuni reservation and they would still understand what we were talking about. Working people understand what working people go through. Women understand how difficult it is to be a woman in this society. And when you tell stories of how women struggled, people think that coal mining is just about men. Well, at the end, there were women working in the mines, but it was always about family. If your daddy worked in the coal mines, your husband worked in the coal mine, you lived it every day.
Yeah.
You lived it every day. And we never had any trouble, ever, ever, that people, through our storytelling, found the truth in it.
Mhm.
They found the truth in it. And we weren't trying to sell them. We weren't trying to sell them that. We weren't like doing, we were simply telling the story and letting you find the truth for yourself.
Yeah.
Mm.
Let me pause you for a minute because I want to welcome Andrew Burton, who is the founder and leader of Street Spirits Theater in British Columbia. He works with young people, and they also do a lot of work, building on people's experiences to create their plays. So welcome, Andrew. Glad you could make it. Rama, do you want to tell us another story? Maybe if you have one about from a woman's perspective, that'd be great to hear. But anything you.
Let me. Do you want to hear a long? Do you want to hear a longer story?
Sure.
I mean, I don't want to take. I don't know. I don't
You
want to
good?
take up a lot of time. I mean, I know I'm taking up a lot of time just talking.
Well, you are the reason we're here to hear your
Well,
stories.
You're the reason I'm here. So I'm taking that into consideration. And before I lose this, who's the lady? Where's the lady from Australia?
She put in the chat that somebody appeared at her door she had to deal with.
Oh, really? My friend Martha Spencer is touring in Australia right now from up the White Top Mountain. She's in Australia and does a tour every year. So she tours all over. I wanted to tell her to go see Martha. But I'm going to tell you a story that is there are a whole group of stories. Most of you all will have heard of Jack Tales. Everybody heard of Jack Tales?
No, I don't think they have.
You know one Jack Tale. One Jack and the Beanstalk was the one that Disney took and and Disneyized. But there's a whole ton of Jack Tales that came from British Isles primarily. And it's always the same characters, and it's always about the same thing. Jack is working class, poor, downtrodden, and somehow through his own wits and his own fortitude, he comes out on top. You know, whether it's the metaphorical giant or the king, which is the metaphorical ruler. Or, anyway, you got to understand that these are metaphorical things, and that. But there is also then. So if you don't know Jack Tales, then I'm going to tell you that you need to find some other tales. They're called Mutzmag tales. Mutzmag. We
Let's
call Mutzmag. And her name was spelled Muttsmeg, and you have to say the E long. Ag. Mutzmag. That's what E sounds like down here. You got any eggs? Yeah, Mutzmags. But anyhow, I'm going to tell you quickly, and I'm going to sit down for this one. Once there was a little girl named Mutzmag, and she lived with her daddy up on the side of the mountain. Now, her mama had died, and Mutzmag and her daddy lived pretty poorly. Because her daddy, he had terrible bad luck. If he put out a crop of corn, I swear he'd die by July. If he was to try to do anything, poor man he just couldn't do nothing. But Mutzmag was always supporting her daddy and telling her, now, Daddy, don't worry about it. It'll get better. And he'd say, honey, but I want to get you a pair of shoes. And she'd say, I don't need no shoes. Look at these feet. I can walk through hot coals. Don't worry about it. But now, Mutzmag's uncle, her daddy's brother, was just the opposite. He lived down in town. I swear to God, everything that man touched turned to money. He had everything. And every now and then, Mutzmag would go down and visit her cousins. She had 2 girl cousins down there. And she'd get down there, and Lord have mercy, they'd sit in on her. Mutzmag, ain't that the same dress you was wearing last time when you come down here? Yes, it is. But I like it. And I wash it every other day, so it ain't dirty. Well, I was just wondering, have you got any shoes, Mutzmag? I got to see you wear shoes one time. No, I ain't got no shoes, and I don't need no shoes. And they just would just devil that young'un's death. And then one day she was getting ready to leave, and over there on her uncle had come in from the barn, and he hollered back at the foreman. He says, now take that little old runny calf there and just go ahead and throw it over the ditch land. It ain't gonna live, and I don't want to waste no money on it, and I don't want to waste. Just go ahead and get rid of it. And Mutzmag said, Uncle, no, Uncle, please don't kill that little calf. Give it to me. Lord, how mercy. That's exactly what you and your daddy need, is one more mouth to feed till it dies on you and your son eat all your food up. No, I ain't gonna give it to you. Uncle, please give it to me. All right, fine. Go get it. So Mutzmag went and got this little old calf, and she took it up to her daddy's house on the top of the mountain, and she got her one of them, I don't know, it was a 7-Up bottle or something or other, and she put one of her daddy's glove thumbs on it like that. And she mixed up some water and some sugar and some flour and stuff, and she used that little old calf and started in a suckling. Oh, now it started in a suckling, jumping, got up and started moving around. Mutzmag kept on feeding that little old calf till I'm telling you what's the truth. In about 6 months, that was the prettiest looking thing you ever seen in your life. If you can find me a prettier looking calf than that, I'll give you $100 right now. Well, as soon as I get it, I'll give you $100. So anyway, Mutzmag got that calf, and something her cousins had never ever come, but today they come to visit. And they were talking around, and they were saying same old thing. Oh, you still wearing that dyed dress? My Lord, Mutzmag, you're just pitiful, pitiful, pitiful. And they getting ready to walk away and go back down the hill when they hear this, and they look, and here come that little old calf. Oh, my Lord. When the light hit that thing, it just shined. I mean, it was just, you find a pretty calf in that, I'll give you $200. So anyhow, them cousins took one look at that calf and says, oh, my Lord, what in the world did that come from? Mutzmag said, That's the calf that your daddy gave me. That thing was, that thing was dying. That can't be that calf. No, it ain't that. Now, don't lie to me. Where'd you get that? That's the one that your uncle gave me. My uncle gave me. Whoa, them girls run straight home just as fast as they could. Sister to daddy, daddy, you won't believe it, but Megan's got calf up there. It's pretty round, it's pretty daddy. I want that calf, daddy. You go get that calf, go buy it, go get it. So, up the mountain he went to his brother's house and he said, let me see that calf Mutsmaid's got. And out here come that calf. And he says to his brother, all right, I see you got something in it, so I'd be willing to give you $50 for it. And Mutsmaid's daddy said, oh no, you can't buy that calf. That's a girl's calf. No. If you want to talk to her, but she ain't gonna sell that calf. And the man, he got so mad. He said, well, I'll tell you one thing. I'll go down there and I'll law you. I will. In case you don't know it, lawing people is the favorite sport of Appalachia. You know, yeah, it's like a board game or something or other. You know, but anyway, I law you. That's what I do. And doggone down to the mountain, how he went. He had power and position, and went to the courthouse. And wait a minute, today was something different. The old judge had done retired. A brand new judge had come along. A young feller who had no sense of belonging to anybody. He wasn't in nobody's pocket. He was going to be the best judge that ever was in that county. And Mutsmaid's uncle says to him, now, I know that girl's got that calf, and I offered to buy it, but to tell you the truth, that was my calf. That was my calf from my cow. And I think that the truth of the matter is I'll pay her for the feed, but it's mine. It's mine. She ain't got no paperwork. She ain't got nothing. It's mine. And the judge said, Well, no, that's pretty interesting. I don't know. I tell you what, bailiff, you go up there and tell that girl to come down here to the court and explain this to us. And so they went up to the court. And oh, Lord Mutsmaid was so worried. She thought sure they were going to take her calf from her. But her daddy said, now, honey, now don't get all excited. Just wait till morning. You know that morning is wiser than evening. Mutsmaid said, okay. So the next morning, she got up bright and early. She said goodbye to her calf. She went down to the judge's room. He said, now, miss, I hear tell that you got your uncle's calf and you were not willing to sell it or give it back to her. And she said, looky here, right is right and wrong is wrong. And if you're any kind of judge, you ought to be knowing the truth. That's what you ought to be. Now, here was a young judge. He wasn't used to being talked to this way, especially by what kind of sporty looking girl. He says, well, now, I tell you, that's true. That's the truth, Okay. Oh, go get her, uncle. Bring him in here. Okay. Now I'll tell you what I want to do. I'm going to do this fair and light. I'm going to give you all a riddle and a test. And whoever can solve the riddle and the test, you come back down here for court early in the morning. Be here by 9 o'clock, and the one that answers the riddle, I'll give him the calf. And he leans back, in his wise Cornell law study best, and says, or maybe it was UVA wise, I can't remember. But anyhow, he says to this, I want you to tell me what is the fattest thing in the world. And Mutsmaid's uncle said, I know, I own it. It's that big old fat hog of mine. That thing is 99.9% fat. If you was to render that hog out, you wouldn't have nothing but lard. You would have nothing but 100-pound lard. And the judge said, now wait a minute. We're going to give this girl a chance to answer, huh? And when you come back tomorrow. So back they come tomorrow, What is the fattest thing in the world? And he's got the same answer. I told you, it's that big old fat hog. And so he says, okay, I hear you. Turns to Mutzmeg and he says, now, miss, what is the fattest thing in the world? And she says, well, I'll tell you what's the truth. It's greed. Pure and simple. It's greed. No matter how much you feed it, no matter how fat it gets, no matter what, it wants more and more and more till it ain't nothing left. It's greed. And the judge said, doggone, that is sharp, girl. I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. Hey, whoa, hold on a minute. You didn't tell me it was no trick question. You didn't tell me. I thought I was looking for a real thing. That ain't fair. That ain't fair. I'll get me a lawyer. Well, you already got a lawyer. Well, I'll get me another lawyer. Okay, fine, get you some more lawyers. You know, sometimes even the president can't get enough lawyers. I swear to God, he's the truth. So, all right, fine. So he says, I'm gonna ask you another riddle, okay? I'm gonna ask you another riddle. He says, I want you to come back down here tomorrow morning. And I want you to come back and I want you to be neither riding nor walking. He's saying this to Mutzmeg. I want you to come back down here tomorrow. I want you to be neither riding nor walking, dressed or undressed. And I want you to give me a gift that I can't give away. And if you can do that, I'm going to give you that cat. Well, poor little Mutzmeg, she never heard such a thing in her life. How can you be neither riding nor walking? I mean, how can you be dressed and not dressed? And how can you give somebody a gift that they can't give back? Poor little Mutzmeg, she went to bed and she was so worried. And her daddy said, honey, morning is wiser than evening. You just wait. So Mutzmeg gets up the next morning and she has this idea. She goes out there on the front porch and slips off that little raggedy dress of hers and she gets her rucksack. Y'all know what rucksack is, a tater sack like thing, a rucksack. And she slips it down over her head and cuts a hole in sticking out here. So she ain't dressed nor undressed. And then what she does is she gets on that little calf and jumps up on it and kind of like a sack of meal and it's packing her. She ain't riding and she ain't walking, but she's being packed. Now that's a whole lot of difference right there, being packed, you know. And when she got down there to the judge's thing and she rolled that little calf right in, right up to the chin, and there she was, neither dressed nor undressed, neither riding nor walking. And he said, oh, wait a minute, one more thing. You got to give me a gift that I can't give back. And she said, just wait a minute. You're a little pushy, you know that? So she walks up to the judge and she said, Judge, honey, hold out your hands. She held out her hands and Mutzmeg uncupped her hand. And right there in her hand was a little bluebird and it lit in his hand and flew away. A gift that he couldn't give back. Oh my goodness. I just said, honey, I'm telling you, you are something else. Now, you reckon I might be, come up to your place of courting someday? She said, well, now, Judge, honey, that's a riddle you're going to have to answer for yourself.
Very nice. Oh, wow.
That's a Mutzmeg tale, and that's as fast as I can tell it, sorry.
That's great. Ron, would you be willing, if people have some questions or thoughts for you now, to hear it from them?
Sure, sure.
Anyone want to jump in with a thought or a question?
Well, now, there you go.
Raquel.
Yeah. Well, I loved learning of the creation of the roadside. Of the roadside theater and how you were talking about it, of showing up on the roadside and creating the shows and then people being in conversation with you, right? In the show itself. And I was wondering how that changed or created your theater, because theaters are different in how they do things.
Sure. it just basically reinforced our thought that we were having a conversation, not acting. You know, if you'd in the beginning, if you'd told me I was acting, I would have had some trouble with that one. But so it just showed us that we were in conversation, and that when you remove that distance from yourself and the audience, it's possible to include that energy in what you're doing. A lot of times, what we did depended upon how they responded. Many times it did. Uh, you get that energy from them. Um, 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 you get that you get a feeling. You get those feelings of. Um, we were in Alabama one time, and we were working together in this play with Junebug Productions, and it was a story of three families: Appalachian family, um, a Puerto Rican family from the Bronx, and a black family from Louisiana. And we all had our own story, but those stories intertwined and from one to the other, and and there was music that helped with that movement. And you look out into the audience, and you can see faces looking at you. And so what I did was anytime I saw anybody paying particular attention, I keyed in on them and I talked directly to them, just like I'm doing right now with you. And I talked directly to them. And I found that if I talked to that one person that way, the whole audience felt that.
Mm,
They picked up on that. They felt that I was talking to them as a whole.
mm,
And so you would look, and you never. We always had the house lights up just a little bit, not enough to blind you or make you think, but we wanted to see the faces and we wanted to see the responses because it helped us with the energy that we were doing. And I would, and so in this audience in Alabama, it was 90% black. This was an audience of 90% black people, you know. And the story was about an Appalachian family, a poor Appalachian family, a mother and a disabled son who takes fits. That's what they called it. Some. It wasn't epilepsy. He had some kind of, well, anyway, I don't get into that, but he was not allowed to go to school. He was not. So it was about love. The play was about love. You know, Promise of a Love Song was the name of the play. So it was a mother and this disabled son who she dearly loved, no matter how much trouble he was. Love beyond all imagination. This was a story between a husband and a wife who had a husband who was maybe a little bit full of himself, and but she still supported him. She and in this Puerto Rican family that had just come from Puerto Rico to the Bronx, and they were trying to settle in. And
mm,
anyway, I'm sitting there and I look and I see this young woman, and she's looking at me as I'm talking, and I'm playing this. I'm telling the story from Billy's perspective, who was got Billy was really bright when he was in school, but now they won't let him go to school. He's in love, but he doesn't know how to show love, and so so it's this frustration, this hard frustration, and his mom has to coach him through it. And this young black woman came up to me and she said this. She said, I have never in my life thought that I would be sitting in an audience and I would have more feeling for white people than I did for the other people on that stage. I never thought I would ever feel that way about white people.
mm.
And you don't know what to say. You just say, um, you know, because what you were feeling was what you were feeling. You were real. It was not anybody trying to coach you into that. It was not anybody trying to politicize you into that. It was not anybody telling you this is the way you ought to feel. This was the way you felt. And if that is a true emotion, then you can and not in any way make that small.
Mm.
In no way.
Lou, you have a question. Lou Hinman.
Yes, I'd like to thank you, Ron, for your storytelling. It was wonderful, and
Thank you.
both the stories as such and the stories about your experience with the Roadside Theater. It's like truly beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
And I wanted to ask Ben what it was like to be, if he wanted to say more about what it was like to be a communist Jew in the Roadside Theater.
Well, it's funny. You know, when I met Dudley, who's another one of the founders of Roadside, I met him in Atlanta for the first time in 2014. And, you can imagine a lot of things that you might talk with, the director of the Hillbilly Theater Company about, and probably the reasons why Karl Polanyi's economic theories did not win out over the economic theories of Friedrich Hayek and its legacies for the war on poverty would not be the first thing that comes to mind. And yet that was exactly what that conversation was, that I realized that in a funny way, these were kind of my people. And there is a huge intellectual tradition that's behind the way that they tell stories, the way that we tell stories. There is a huge amount that we have in common that's not obvious. And one of those things that we have in common is that we both want and sort of deeply crave and need to be part of a community. And yet we're all sort of weirdos that are kind of on the outskirts at the same time. And that we, the mainstream theater worlds never embraced Roadside, just as the mainstream Black theater world never embraced Junebug Productions. And a longtime collaborators with John O'Neill, Ron was talking about, just like traveling Jewish theater, Roadside were a long time couldn't book a gig in a synagogue. And
Ooh, I think we just lost Ben.
Mm.
So hopefully he'll be back in a minute and finish his response, Lou.
Yes.
We had a very long time, a very, very long time getting any appreciation and recognition, certainly from foundations, to get support for theater. We couldn't even get our own Kentucky arts program in Kentucky to support us.
Hmm.
We put in application after application, and they didn't support us. And here's the thing that is either both aggravating as hell and also is also a very prime example of what moves this world. When we went to New York and got rave reviews and write-ups by Smithsonian Magazine, all of a sudden the people from the Kentucky Arts were coming to New York to see us.
Mm.
And when we came back home, they were started acting a little differently. But now, why in the hell do you got to go to New York to see the show for it to? How did that give it credibility? Why would that make that? I mean, maybe I'm not being fair in my anger, but it's like, why does that make um, that more important than it does in Whitesburg, Kentucky?
Mm.
You know, and I'm not talking about. I'm talking about funding agencies, people who you hope will have a better sensibility than that and a better understanding about public arts and the support of public arts to understand that by God we're public. You know, these people need this work in their lives. I mean, I'm not saying that they need to have a voice. So anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, sorry. I understand your frustration. And I also think it's important to pause and take the credit for the fact that Roadside supported itself without that kind of top-down money for so long. And that's
Yes.
that's a
Well,
big
we
on-
got it, but
lot
it
of
only
pride in
after we
it.
went to New York. That's
Yeah, no, I hear you.
yeah.
Yeah, we eat a lot of treat. If you don't know what treat is, it's the cheap man's spam.
Mm.
It's a poor man's spam. Treat. Ben was telling you, was talking there before he left. I don't know where he went, but he was talking, so I didn't think it's worth listening to him finish up, if you will.
Nah, quite
Yeah.
all right. Yeah, I don't know what just happened to just Zoom just shut down without warning. But what I was just gonna say is just recognize that there are we shared so much that was not obvious in the ways and that kind of in various ways made us all in very again wanting to be part of a community, but then sort of on the outskirts of it. Like, you know, I'll tell you a story that I've often told, which is when I went to the coal fields, you know, as the kind of person who I am, I figured that a certain number of people would dismiss me offhand for being an outsider. I didn't think it would be the liberals.
Mm.
And that is what I found over and over and over again. That the people who claimed to be like me, who claimed to have my politics, oh no, but I wasn't doing what they were doing. I wasn't doing the sectarian activist thing. I was like making plays and going deep into, you know, a coal camp and working with a Trump voter. And you know, and we ended up having more in common than those people. Well, it's really the thing about insiders and outsiders is it's so arbitrary, right? My office when I was working at Roadside was in Whitesburg, Kentucky, county seat of Letcher County, one county over from where Ron is right now. And Whitesburg is a metropolis of 1,900 population. I was early in my time there talking with a woman from Jeremiah, Kentucky, about 20 minutes away, population roughly 100. She called me an outsider.
And he's outside again.
Oh,
Let me take advantage of the fact that we have a pause. Andrew in Burton, I just want to let's take a few minutes and maybe tell us a little about Street Spirits, because I feel a kinship between you and Roadside that you guys have never met. So
there was a moment when I was just listening to what you guys were saying, and certainly Street Spirits has always been the outsider. We were the outsider in the theater community because we worked in such an unusual way. Our original theater style built a lot on the theater of the oppressed from Auguste Boal.
Mhm.
But and I'd trained with Boal, and at one point we were teaching a theater class in Toledo, Ohio, and I had 6 street-involved young people from Prince George, British Columbia, Canada, teaching theater in Ohio.
Well,
And what we found was it was very interesting because we had these young people, and they don't think in terms of structure and This is the way you do things, and theater, and what had happened was that they had created a really nice piece of theater to perform that broke all of Boal's rules. And we performed this at this event, and there were a lot of people there Boal was there, and there were a lot of other people there who were following his work and using his work. And we had done a piece where we were teaching invisible theater, where you create a scene in the street or in a public place, and the audience doesn't know that it's theater. They think they're seeing something that's really happening. And we had been doing that. But then we had this set piece that we had created to showcase for the people at this theater festival. And this guy, at the end, we always have a discussion between our actors and the audience. And this guy gets up and he starts reprimanding my actors because we had done things that Boal wouldn't approve of and that weren't according to Boal's theater of the oppressed style, And one of our young women, Jamie, she's standing on stage and she says, well, we worked really hard on this and we thought we had something new and fresh and exciting, and we really wanted to put it out there for people. And you come in after all that work and all that effort and coming all the way here from Canada, you saying this, it just tears me up. And she starts crying and ran off the stage. And the entire audience turned and faced this guy with this kind of like, you bastard.
To make a girl cry.
Are you making that poor young lady cry? And I left, I had one of my youth who was a little more advanced than the rest. This was Alan. And I said, Al, take the stage. I'm gonna go make sure that Jamie's okay. And I ran out and I find Jamie in the lobby and I say, are you okay? And she gives me a big smile and she says, can I act or what? But that was the thing. We found that the theater community, even the theater of the oppressed community, didn't agree with what we were doing because we weren't doing it exactly the way Boal.
Oh, Andrew, you are speaking to my heart. And by the way, apologies to everyone. This has never happened to me before with the Zoom doing this. So, so I was a Theater of the Oppressed practitioner for many years before I came to Roadside. I was on the board of Pedagogy and Theater of the Oppressed. And what you are talking about is so real, right? That and actually there's an interesting Roadside history here too, because in addition to making and touring plays and doing community residencies, Roadside has a long history doing teaching and production within colleges and universities. So teaching classes and doing long-term, up to to years-long residencies. And what we found over and over again is the theater programs that would turn to us often did so out of frustration with Boal. Or I would say less frustration with Augusto Boal than the way Boal had become canonized. And, can talk about all sorts of reasons why that is, but I'll just say a couple right now. One is the orthodoxy. Two is an understanding of oppression that totally does not leave any room for solidarity because it's so much finger pointing. It's so much, what I would even call sadomasochism. And three, that there is so little joy of craft in it.
Yeah.
To make a play, to make a story. I knew Augusto just a little bit before he died. I don't believe he was into that at all.
No,
But
it
that's
wasn't.
absolutely what Theater of the Oppressed became in the first world. And
And, I think that, that University of Omaha has a lot to answer for on that.
mm,
But my experience with Boal, because I worked with him on a number of occasions after I started Street Spirits, and he was very supportive of everything that we did and the changes we made. He once said to me, he said that I should think of changing the name of what we do. Because if you're calling it Theater of the Oppressed, I have to say, you do things that I don't do. Why are you giving me credit for your work?
huh,
That
Yeah.
was a conversation that I had with Boal.
that's neat.
That's
And,
interesting. Just to jump in, because he said that to other people too, like David Diamond.
Yes. Yeah.
The exact same line I've heard. But for those of you who don't know, Boal was a Brazilian director who created a form of teaching theater that involved the audience for the first time in very radical ways, but has
Yes.
become quite, as you say, orthodox nowadays. Because not everybody here's a theater person, so I just wanted
sure.
to.
How many of you will say, consider yourself or are storytellers?
I do a lot of stories.
I'm sorry, I didn't see, saw Ben's hand, and I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Jacob, yeah.
raise them up again. Raise them up again.
1, 2, 3.
Andrew, Jake, that's it.
All right. Well, that's
Amber.
yeah.
Amber.
There we go. There's folks popping in and out. The thing of it is that some people don't know they're storytellers till they become storytellers.
That was me.
One of my favorite stories is when we were working in Alabama, and we were working at an all-black school, very rural black school, and we finished doing a show, and kids would always come around, kids jumping with so much energy and laughing and making fun of us. I think they'd never seen grown white people act this crazy before, and they were just so happy to know that it was possible, And so, but there was one little girl, I say little black girl because most little girls are little beside me. I'm 6'3", but buddy, she walked straight up to me and she looked me right in the eye and she said, "I can do that." And I said, "Honey, you got it. You got it. That's exactly right. You can do that." The other thing that you need to know is if people thought Roadside wasn't political, they were in trouble. That's their problem. Because I worked at Highlander for many years, and Paulo Freire would come down with my friend Miles Horton and we make the road by walking. And so I'd heard those conversations about street theater, but also understanding, like I said, in some ways, it is not easy to grasp politics. I think it's easier to tell stories than it is. When Ben was talking about who didn't accept me, the liberals. Where we live, liberals are people who have enough money to be liberal. I'm going to say that again.
Yeah.
They have enough money to be liberal. When you ain't got no money, you vote for whichever sumbitch promises you something. And this is another story I want to tell you that happened just this week. I was at Pregonis, and we were getting ready to do the Betsy musical play, and in New York, if you're going to go on stage with other people, you have to have a COVID test. You have to be negative to go on stage. That's just the kind of working rule for Pregonis. And there was a lady there, and she's from the Philippines, and she said, "Well, okay, we'll do the test," and we do the test. And I said, somehow the conversation got around to this. What are you doing here? Because I sounded different than the rest of them. And I said, "Well, where do you come from?" I said, "Kentucky." "Kentucky? Oh, you love Trump." And I said, "No, hell no, I don't love Trump. No, I don't love Trump." She said, "Oh, you don't love Trump?" And I said, no, ma'am, we don't all love Trump. I mean, you know, it's like, she said, I said, do you love Trump? And she said, yes, yes, love Mr. Trump. Oh, yes, I love Mr. Trump. When Mr. Trump was president, there were call centers all over Philippines, and we had all of the phone companies moved down there, and my nephew had a job, and my niece had a job, and Mr. Trump got voted out of office, and Mr. Biden come in and took them all back to America. Now my nephew's out of work, and my niece is out of work. We're gonna vote for Mr. Trump next time he get a job. Don't write people out in East Kentucky because you think they're ignorant some bitches because they voted for Trump. Trump promised them coal would come back. Trump promised them jobs. When you get desperate, when you are desperate, and people promise you work, and they tell you that you're not going to have to move away, you're not going to have to leave the place that you live for all your life, and your family's been there for 150 years. Suddenly, politics becomes, that man will give me a job. I'm going to vote for him. I mean, that's just a fact of it. So it comes down to it. Then when you are talking about how you communicate politics with people, you have to first understand who you're talking with. And I can, whatever you want to say about Mr. Trump, and however I feel about Mr. Trump, he was able to read that portion of America who lost
Yeah.
so much hope and so much, and they were losing a step a day. I mean, they really are losing a step a day. And people think that we're crazy and just shooting each other. No, I'm telling you, this epidemic of shootings comes from desperation. When people
Yes.
are losing jobs, when people are desperate, they go crazy. And some bitches happen to have guns. Yes, oh yeah, plenty of guns. You know, but the problem is, it's not. It is the guns. I'm not. Don't want to get into that with you. But I'm just telling you, we in this country right now, it's a desperate time. I grew up here in Appalachia. I lived my life here in Appalachia, and I would tell you right now, it's the worst times that we've ever seen. You would say, what about oh, wait a minute, what about the Depression? No, man, we could raise enough to eat. You know, it's when we have to pay for this shit that's when we get in trouble. That's when you have to have a dollar. You have to not just a dollar. I mean, prices going crazy, and people are going crazy here. They are just every day they're more and more desperate. And I'm telling you, what will happen again? They will vote for him they will. And they will not understand if you try to explain to them in an intellectual or liberal way why you should not be voting for this man, because he's just taking money out of one person's pocket and putting it in rich people's pocket, you know, and that there are more rich people in the world than there used to be ever, then there's more poor people in the world than there used to be. And how come that is? It's kind of, you know, it works hand in glove, you know. And so Roadside, while we may not have been overtly from the stage seemed radical politically, these stories, this message of ownership, I can do that. Self sense,
Yeah.
you know, I can do. These stories radicalize people to think about themselves in their communities, and to help them to look at themselves and their communities. And I think that's about that. You know, you can wrestle with the Trumps and the anti-Trumps, but if you don't find a way to deliver a message to people that is positive, that helps them make the decisions, helps them make decisions, they're going to answer in desperation. And Miles Horton from Highlander taught me my most important lesson that I learned. That nothing good ever comes from desperation. Real change only comes when there is hope.
Hope. Exactly.
Amen.
Amen. Yes. Lou, you've had your hand up for a long time. You want to get your
Yeah,
question?
I can't resist telling this little story. Ron, the young Black woman who looked you straight in the eye, I remember Fred Newman, the late Fred Newman, who was the artistic director at the Castillo Theater before Dan became, until he retired and Dan became the artistic director. But one of the things he said that I remember about the Castillo Theater was the reaction that he was looking for from people who came to Castillo's plays was, I can do that.
Yeah. No, that really rung the exact words. So
Yeah.
that is what it's about. That's empowerment. That's
It's one of
giving
the
people the
things
power
that
to tell their
distinguishes-
stories.
And
It's one of the things that distinguishes people's theater and folk art from elite art, which is elite art says you can't do that, and
Exactly.
folk art says you can do that.
one of the things that people don't understand also about Appalachia, and if I could say to people one thing that would help them to understand the people better. Um, 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 there is a true love of home here. Home meaning the mountains where we live, the place that we call home. You would not think a land ravaged by strip mining and clear cutting. There would be a true love for that place. But that coal mining and that strip mining, and that cutting comes from the outside corporations. And it's sort of like my daddy said one time, we're being hired to tear down our own house. That's what it is. We're being hired to tear down our own homes. That's how we felt about the mountains. And in some ways, as I get older, it's even stronger in me. It is stronger in me. I feel a kind of power here that I don't feel any place else. I have good friends all over the world. You know, if you die blessed with good friends, then you die blessed. And but this place still gives me courage and joy that it's difficult to explain to somebody who is not from here. Because it's easy to see only the bad stuff. It really is easy to only see. You know, it's like going to New York City and then saying the stuff you see in the gutter is New York City. That's not New York City. You know, any more than strip mining is the whole of Appalachia.
Right.
So, but before we leave, I'll ask you for one thing. I want to sing you a song about place, this place. So we will end positively, I'll end positively.
Okay.
And I'll feel better. I don't know about you all, but anyway. But I want to. I know it's getting toward the time when we promised we would quit. Now I'm a firm believer. If you promise we're going to quit at such and such a time, you quit. You know,
Well, I agree with you on that, but I also we all want to hear your song. So
everybody
let's-
has an important life and they have things to do. But anyway, so I want to thank you though for inviting us. I hope you will look to get copies of Art in a Democracy, because it will explain so much more, and you will see a number of plays that came out of this oral process, and you will also find some of our old stories, old stories. And they really are old stories, but within them there is a nugget of art, truth, whatever you want to call it. But so this is a song about place where I live, and so I will do this, and I guess I will say goodbye to you all, and thank you, Ben, and thank you, Dan, and thank you all the rest of you for being.
Yes. Well, let me thank you and for sharing. And there's so much more I know you could share and that we could learn from you. Maybe we can do this again another time.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I would do that. I thank you. There's a song called "The Garden Is Growing." and sweet waters roll down over it all. In the hand of creation lies all around, for the garden is growing even now. Who will work in this garden now? Clear the weeds, lay hold of the plow, plant the seeds and nourish the ground, for the garden is growing even now. And who will raise hope up high, build wings for the dreams and make them fly? Cherish the truth, cherish the truth. I said cherish the truth and never, never lay it down. For the garden is growing even now. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you all. It's very nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a great, this is actually the last class of our spring semester. We'll be building up our fall semester, and we'll let you all know what's coming up in September. So
Thank
thank you all. Look into the book, Democracy and Art, Art and Democracy. And thank you again. Bye-bye.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Ron. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank
so
you.
much.